Hello, everybody, and welcome to Beyond the BMR. I'm your host, Bigfoot's Michigan Rob. This show goes beyond cryptids and Bigfoot. We take a much deeper dive down that rabbit hole. We take on subjects beyond our very own realms and realities. We look at strange phenomena and the unexplained, such as time travel, alien and UFO existence, strange hauntings and mysteries. We explore how all of these rabbit holes somehow come full circle under one umbrella versus a separate plane or wherever that rabbit hole takes us. Tonight, from World Bigfoot Radio, Duke Sullivan. We'll be talking mountain giants and the murderous Genoskwa. It's going to be a whale of a show. Subscribe, hit the alert bell, leave a comment, subscribe to Bigfoot Michigan Rob, subscribe to World Bigfoot Radio if you haven't already, and of course, our flagship is Texas Front Porch. You know, we have a plethora of shows. I stole that line from somebody. Mondays, Texas Front Porch, 7:30 in the East. Tuesdays, Van Buren Variety, 8 in the East. This show, Beyond BMR, 9 in the East. Jason McLean has a show going on after this one later on, Untold Mysteries. That's 10 in the East. Wednesdays, we're back with more Jason McLean Questions Everything. Thursdays, brunch with Bigfoot to Michigan Rob at 1 p.m. I got Steve Stockton this Thursday talking the missing. Serial Papers at 10 in the East. Fridays, our newest lineup, our additions, the Blondes and the Booze with their show, Blondes, Booze, and the Woo. That's at 9 in the East. And we can't forget the lovely Jessica Jones, no longer streaming with us, but you can catch her on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott Saturdays and Sundays at 10 in the East. I'm going to fade the music and bring up my guest, Duke Sullivan. You know, Duke, we're waiting on Tex. He's driving home. He's got crazy hours going on, and that's okay because, well, we all know that Duke can carry a show. He doesn't even need a host or co-host. He can just sit there, a legend in his own, a living legend, I should say, Duke. Welcome to the show, man.
Wow, thanks for the great introduction, and hope you enjoy that $20 I gave you.
Yeah, well, you know, after YouTube takes their cut, it's only $17.26.
Damn it!
You should have said it.
You direct via PayPal next
yeah,
time. I always remember that. Don't do super chats. Actually, YouTube gets a third of it.
Yeah,
so
well, right now,
content creator to get it.
Yes, thank you, Duke. Super chat is open. I'll gladly take it. Of course, I do have a PayPal and a Cash App in my channel about description page.
Yeah, and if you don't like censorship, don't use a super chat. Send all the money directly via PayPal.
Yes, Duke. I will still take it because that money button's sitting right there. It's so easy. It's so easy. But yes, exactly. You know, you got to pay that 35 cents.
On every dollar.
On every dollar, you know. But it is what it is. I'll take what I can get. But again, your money's more important. Your money is important, but sharing this out and leaving a comment, you guys. The algorithms with YouTube, I'm finding out more and more, is that you need to leave a comment. Just say, Rob, you suck. Duke, you're terrible. What do you know? Tex, I can't see his eyes because he's got that hat crouched over him. And speaking of Tex, you know, he decided to saunter on in, Texas style, you know. And there he is. Well, he's not even together yet. Go ahead, take your time, Tex. He's got the mechanics going on.
I like to make an entrance.
Yeah, I know you do.
But I couldn't miss out on, you know, my brother Duke up there, man.
Yeah, well, you can't. And, you know, Tex, we got a great show lined up. We're talking some mountain giants, and a little later on we'll get into Genoskwa, which is something I don't know anything about really, other than reading up on a few items and such. And so once again, subscribe to World Bigfoot Radio, Duke Sullivan. And so Tex.
Sure.
I see you're still sitting in a room. How far off are we from completion of the studio, man?
Well, we've had a change of plans.
Oh, I see.
I will be turning this into the studio.
You will be, okay.
Yeah, because I found out that I'm going to have to redo the entire electrical out there where I was going to put the studio.
So another project put on hiatus, put on the back burner. Or no, you're just going to screw the electrical work.
Yeah, I'm just gonna put it in here. I'm going to sound dampen this room. I've been looking at doing how you do that and stuff, and because I'm going to start doing more voice work and everything, so I need to get rid of all the echo I can, and get that nice little sound. And starting tomorrow, y'all are not going to see much of me for the next 10 days. I've got to work a 10-day stretch. And so, yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah, I bet you are. And then Uncle Sam's going to really enjoy you when it comes, when they write that check for your W-2 form, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Because, you work a lot of overtime, and there comes to a point where you ain't making no damn money.
No, you're working for free because they're taking all the extra money.
That back in the day when I used to work a lot of overtime before I had my bar, I put in my overtime and was like, man, I'm working 15 hours extra per week and making $11 more. I'm like, you know what, guys? You can keep that $11.
Yeah. That ain't no lie.
Well, glad you made it. I was a little worried about your Tex. I thought maybe the snow got you under, because I know how you guys in Texas can't drive in the snow.
Well, I'm far enough south that it ain't. We ain't got no snow yet. So, okay. But yeah, we get an inch of snow. That's a blizzard down here, So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I got to come down and see you, because when you get that big fat check, I want a big Texas steak. I'll you know what? I'll give you the $11, and you can put in the rest. How's that?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll use that $11, and I'll go buy a damn good steak.
Yeah, hell yeah.
We'll cook it right.
We will. Talking about doing it right, we got Duke here, and for the novice, we're starting with some mountain giants here, and Duke, a lot of people, even me, I know some things about mountain giants, but even me, from doing this a while, I've been friends with you, Duke, for probably since I had my first Bigfoot encounter. We got in touch with each other, and you always school me. Duke does school me on a lot of things, and I'm learning from Duke. He's kind of one of my mentors. And so when I first think about mountain giants, I always think about like Jack and the Beanstalk, and then all of a sudden talking over things with you, there's like the Nephilim. There's all these things that comprise giants. So we've heard fairy tales of the kid. Mountain giants is not Jack and the Beanstalk, is it?
Well, good question. Yeah, and that's the problem, is the way the name gets tossed around and used. I first started using it to be something other than Sasquatch, or what you classically think of as a giant. And some of the native tribes in North America actually call the big things that live in the woods near them giants. But not, if you listen to the description of it, it's not a classical giant like we think about it. And one of these things came out recently from Hammerson Peters on his exceptionally good channel. He's a really great archive researcher, and he was doing part 3 of Classic Canadian Sasquatch Stories, which specifically centers around the Columbia Mountain Range of the Rockies, which is pretty much due north of where I am. And on the southwestern side, the natives there would talk about mountain giants, as they called them. They were living up in the mountains nearby. And their description of them is pretty much the same thing as Princess Winnemucca with the giants from Lovelock Cave, and that they were essentially giant humans, long hair, not on their bodies, but on their heads. And, talking about like 15 feet tall. atrocious attitude and appetites. Princess Winnemucca's giants, they were warring with them because they were eating the Paiute tribe. So the Paiute had to wipe them out. In this case, it sounds a little bit different because even though they're described as human-like white men, but with long beards, long hair, and they seem to overreact to pain. It doesn't take much of anything to make them go, owie, owie, and want to run away. So they're not like stout, tough fighters or anything. And there's no reports of them actually capturing and eating humans, although there are reports of them capturing humans and keeping them for a while as pets, basically.
Yeah, kind of, what I try to get when we talk about this subject is the size of these things. I've read things about a 300-foot giant, which of course if they picked up a human being, they could literally drop it in their mouth. I mean, their mouth is probably as big as a 20-foot swimming pool. I'm not so sure those exist. Now, when we talk again, this is an in-depth subject, and
well, if you want to go
is that
biblical
such a thing?
accounts, what you're
is that
referring to,
the pre-flood, post-flood?
yeah,
Noah?
that's exactly what it is. That's the Titans before the flood that were the direct progeny of the fallen angels mating with human women and creating hybrids that had extremely bad pituitary problems and no actual set lifespan. So the longer they lived, the bigger they got. They may have came out the size of a human baby, but they didn't have any limits on how big they got, apparently. According to the biblical accounts at that time, the humans lived a lot longer too. Methuselah and some of these guys lived 700, 800, 900 years. So if you got a giant that's going to live 700, 900 years, how big is it going to get? So this could explain some of the colossal sizes. But apparently, as time went along, there were not only most of them got wiped out in the flood, according to the biblical account, but then the little strains of the giant bloodline that were left afterwards yielded much smaller giants. Apparently, it had been diluted with the human bloodlines at least once or twice. So at that point, they were only talking about 15, 20-foot giants, which is what you're still getting reports of today in places like Afghanistan with the Kandahar giant. There's been a couple of reports from North America this year, potentially, where there was giants, one in Colorado, another one up in Alaska, and then various old legends from some of the tribes in various places in North America that, yeah, there were giants. And, they didn't look like the North American natives. They looked like white men, just giant white men.
Mm-hmm.
And they had atrocious habits like eating the natives. So they didn't get along very well. So there's the whole, any relic populations of giants that were left. And, there's legends from the natives talking about the giants were trying to wipe out all of them and eat them. So they all had to gang up on them, and they had a big war against them. And the Navajo talk about that, where they drove them out of North America across the Siberian land bridge or across the pack ice above it, depending on how long ago that was exactly. They don't really detail it, but that was thousands and thousands, thousands of years ago. Mm-hmm. So they drove most all the giants off the continent. And you also see evidence in the whole mound builder culture in the central U.S., especially around the Mississippi River, where there's all that kind of stuff going on. And, they've been covering up for 150 years or longer, where they dig into some of these mounds and they find a giant's skeleton, and it is surrounded presumably by its retainers. They were also buried along with it. And this was a common thing that was done over in Europe too. But in this case, the retainers are all human size. It's just the leader's a giant. And this matches up with the native legends that these giants had taken over all the human tribes in that area and just enslaved them, basically. And over in the Southwest, apparently, they were just trying to eat them. They're trying to get rid of them completely. So they didn't feel like they had any choice but to go to war with them. So that's where all that led to. So it's entirely possible that there are some population, little pockets of them well hidden still on the continent. And one thing the Navajo even mentioned in their legend when they were chasing them through Alaska off the continent, that a group of them got away and went east, and they never caught up with them. Well, if you break away from there and you go east, where do you end up? Nahanni Valley.
Mm-hmm. That's the land of the dead, or
land of the headless men.
Headless men,
of the headless men. And there's been plenty of other sightings of weird cryptids and stuff up there too. And even to this day, you can't go wander around that valley. They won't give you a permit to go outside of certain areas.
Wow. You just mentioned early on about just the giants back during this time being just giant humans, right? So if you're looking up research or you're looking up the folklore of giants and you see the depictions of these things with two heads and just grotesque looking things, is that make believe, Duke, or is that what the Nephilim really was? That
we
Nephilim?
we don't know for sure, but I mean the accounts from post biblical where people were still running into these giants occasionally and having knockdown dragouts with them do seem to indicate that although they look like us, they don't look exactly like us. Like they're deformed and hideous and monstrous looking to our viewpoint. So they ain't very good to look at, No. Maybe
we hear about the trolls. Are we talking about the same thing? Or
up.
Huh? Hello?
Oh, looks like Dookie froze up a little bit there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was me or him.
Did this happen last week, Tex? It happened. Who do we have on? It was me and you doing a show where all of a sudden it froze up. No, it wasn't. It was me and Jessica had Daryl on.
No, must be your animal magnetism.
Yeah, I don't know. And that's the only risk you run in doing these live feeds. Now, of course, Duke lives out in the mountains.
Right.
And it looks like he's going to have to.
Yeah, he'll be back.
He'll be back. Everybody, he will be back on. He will be back on. And with that being said, when you listen and hear about giants, Tex, what do you typically think about? We're talking early about these big 300 footers, but then again, I've heard depictions of a giant like David and Goliath being an 8-footer. We'll ask that of Duke when he gets back. But what's your what do you?
I always like the Kandahar giant. 15, 20 feet tall. The ones that were found in that cave in Dadgummit, Arizona, maybe, where they found these redheaded, remains of these redheaded giants that the way they killed them, they actually started a fire in front of the cave and they suffocated them. But those are normally what I think about. These titans he was talking about, these 300-foot tall, gargantuans, and Overbuilt says Lovelock Cave, but there he is. He's
here.
Back.
All right, let him get situated here. Yeah, Lovelock Cave.
Yeah. But that's what I was going to ask him. And when we're talking about these giants that are 100 feet tall or more, are we talking about, and two heads and everything? Is that the trolls that we, of lore that we talk about? And like the movie Troll Hunter, that type of thing.
Yeah, no, that's a troll.
Okay. So those are totally different things.
Different thing. Yep. We'll get to that later on. So anyway, getting back to the giants again. Now, most of the giants that they talk about from the biblical accounts are really ginormous. The ones that we would think of as like the Titans rather than something Goliath sized that was 8 or 9 feet tall.
Gotcha.
Those guys are all extinct. The Nephilim technically are gone. Some of their bloodlines still exist in much diluted form. A lot of the globalist masters that still try and rule the earth have Nephilim blood. That's why they like to breed with each other, to try and keep as much of that Nephilim blood as they can in their bloodline. But one of the other ways that you can differentiate these things is that supposedly now the Nephilim giants, and I don't know if this is the case with the Anunnaki, it seems like there's a lot of crossover there. That may be a different version of the same story. 6 fingers, 6 toes, double rows of teeth.
Right.
And a lot of the giant skeletons dug up in North America all show these attributes: 6 fingers, 6 toes, double rows of teeth. Keep that in mind for later. So what is a mountain giant? Well, again, like I said, some of the tribes use that name for the actual Bigfoot that live in their area, really big Bigfoot. They'll refer to them as, mountain giants, or it's kind of a nickname. And then, like I was saying earlier, there's one tribe there that specifically is talking about there being like giant white men type giants that are in that one area on the western side of the southwestern side of the Columbia mountain range. So you do get those reports and stuff. Now, when I started looking into it, and if you guys want to see one of the first reports I ever did this, it's on Sasquatch Chronicles, and they've got that episode up on YouTube, and it has about 500,000 views on it. So you'll be like the last people on earth that haven't seen it yet, but go check it out. Anyway, this the deal here is that Wes got a couple of these reports too, and he got them from Alaska, and the people that made the reports were just so freaked out by it, they didn't want to go on air and talk about it, because, like, come on, it's hard enough to even talk about Bigfoot. Nobody's going to believe me. I saw some 15-foot tall thing.
Right.
And the ones he got the reports of, they sounded more like humanoid giants, because they apparently did have footwear. They had some kind of clothing or, hides or something stitched together, and that sort of thing that they were wearing. One of them, he said it looked like a caveman that had a giant stone axe it was carrying. Like, nobody's going to believe me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, dude, another question. I know you're probably going to answer all the questions before I ask them, but yeah, they had, okay, I hear about the big stone weaponry they used with axes and whatever else. Some of them had, I think some of them had, like, didn't they have like catapults surrounding their mountainside? They didn't even need that, did they?
Oh, no, they were catapults. They could pick up a boulder and huck it further than a catapult that humans could make at that point.
Yeah,
they had human slaves to keep
big
forces at bay long enough for them to come out and squish them.
It's twice you've mentioned human slaves. I mean, if I'm 300 foot and I'm just a menacing beast, what the hell do I need a slave for? What can a 5'10" or probably?
Well, you're going way back further past the flood now, so that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking.
See, that's what I'm saying. There's so many. This reminds me of. This is why I'm glad you're on, because how there's the chart. A lot of people classify Bigfoot in 4 or 5 different variations. Dogman. So really, giants, depending on what time frame you're in, is what you're talking about, because they consider the giant David from David and Goliath as a giant. And I read accounts where he was no bigger than 9 foot tall, and that ain't no giant. So it depends on what era we're talking about, correct?
Well, when all the humans are running around are 5 feet tall and somebody's 9 feet tall, that's a giant. Yeah. How much bigger than you do they have to be a giant? We may not think of them as giants nowadays, but if you have a whole tribe of people that are 9 or 10 feet tall and you're all 5 feet tall, they're giants. And that's the kind of stuff people were running into, like who was it, Magellan, that was down there in Patagonia, and they ran into giants down there. Patagonia literally means big feet. The first tribe they ran into, they said the people were like almost twice as tall as they were.
Mm-hmm.
So there were giants in North America. And then if you go back and look at there's old fossil tracks and stuff with human footprints in them. And some of them are human-sized footprints, and other ones are not. They're freaking gigantic. Absolutely gigantic. There's one in South Africa is like, 4 feet long. And they got other ones in other parts of the world that are well preserved in stone. So there's that kind of stuff too, to indicate what kind of possible sizes these things had. But nowadays, the only thing that anybody's seeing in the last, few thousand years, couple thousand years anyway, are the ones that are in the, 10 to 15 foot range, apparently. And that would be the Rephaim, because there's not supposed to actually be any Nephilim after the flood. They got wiped out. The remnant of their population and their bloodlines were the Rephaim, the risen giants, and those were the post-flood giants like Og Bashan and Goliath and some of the other descendants of Anak and whatnot that they name in the Bible. And the Bible talks about all the different tribes of Nephilim, and even the names indicate certain weird things, anomalies about how they all looked a little bit different than each other. They're all giants, but they didn't look the same. Like the sons of Anak, the Anakim, those are the ones that had the elongated skulls that they find like places like Paracas and whatnot. and they had long necks, and the Horim were especially hairy. So all these tribes of giants didn't all look like each other. But over here in North America, it sounds like it was really homogenous, because the only reports you get of giants, even from the old legends, they all look like the same. A giant white man with red hair. So might have been one of the reasons they were like fairly hostile when we showed up. They're like, "Oh, great, pygmy versions of the man-eating giants. Now what the hell do we have to deal with?"
So when we talk now, you actually ran into some. Well, I mean, you found evidence of some mountain giants in an area you were going to, and y'all bugged out, right?
Oh yeah, we tried to go back there last year and find the spot again, but it was a road squatching accident where Michael was driving along through the Gemstone Range and just saw a huge X structure from the road, and went, "Hold on, family, let me park over here on the side of the road, and I'll go walk in there and film the X structure." Well, as soon as he started getting near it, he got this creepy feeling he was being watched. So I was like, "Well, I'm going to snap a picture from each side and then get out of here." And when he got around to the far side of it, he found two gigantic tracks. So, of course, he didn't have a tape measure with, but he put his foot down next to one of the tracks and took a picture of it. And that is in the outro video section of every show that I do, where there's the big track next to the foot that's outlined, and then the outline fades away. That's the track. And if you notice, it's got 4 toes. So now we're getting to the whole mountain giant thing, which Lauren Coleman accidentally discovered in his book, True Giants. Is Gigantopithecus still alive? And if it is, it lives in the Himalayas and ain't anywhere over here. But he mentions that there's this whole a whole lot of reports of peculiar tracks that don't match Bigfoot tracks. And before I get into that, I should mention that if you ever see a gigantic track out in the woods, you could actually tell if it's a giant track or a Bigfoot track, because Bigfoot's foot isn't built like a human's is. It doesn't have any instep. There's no arch. It's flat-footed. And in some cases, when they step on a loose substrate, some of them have mid-tarsal joint, and they will kick up this little ridge at the front part of their foot that humans don't do because we don't have a joint there. This is not to say they all do. Some of them do not have a mid-tarsal joint, contrary to what certain armchair researchers will tell you. Now, on the other hand, if you find a gigantic track that's extremely outsized and it's made just like a human track with the whole instep and everything, like that's a giant. That's not a Bigfoot. You might want to leave the area. They're notorious for eating people. Now, here's the other thing. There's this third class of weird tracks that people have been finding for a long time. And this is where we get into mountain giants, because clearly when you start seeing examples of weird tracks over and over again, there's something going on there. And especially when you're finding them all different parts of the continent. And there's a homogeneity to them where it's not like the cripplefoot track or something like that, where you have a maimed individual that's got a weird shaped foot because they had an accident, or else they had some sort of an aberration during their birth cycle and they came out a little mutant looking and have weird feet. That happens to humans too. If it's an injury to a foot, it's only one foot that's going to look like that. And if it's a genetic abnormality, maybe both feet will look like that, but not necessarily. So you could have 2 weirdly shaped feet. Right. Now, on the other hand, if you start finding a whole bunch of individuals with the same weird foot shape, different sizes from all over the continent, congratulations, you've got another subspecies. So in the absence of any other known name from any native language, I just kind of gave them the generic grouping of mountain giants. So what's different about their feet? Well, if you look at a mountain giant track, it's pretty similar to a Sasquatch track. It's flat-footed. They don't have an arch. Most of them, Sasquatch tracks are, again, you can differentiate it by length and width. The vast majority of them fall into this framework, which is the width at the front of the foot, just below the toes, the widest part of the foot, should be equal to 50% of the length, the total length of the track. That's going to fall very closely within that range, give or take a little bit. Some of them have slimmer foot, some of them have a little fatter foot. But the width of the foot's generally going to fall to about 50% of the length. Now, it seems like in the case of the mountain giants, the width is greater than 50%. They don't seem to have a hallux. And for those of you that don't know the technical term, that's your big toe. They don't have a big toe. If they do have a big toe, it's an outrigger toe. It's on the side of their foot, like you would expect from a pongid, a great ape, like a gorilla, orangutan, chimpanzee, where their foot looks like a hand and it's got a divergent toe coming off the side. But if that is the case, they're not putting that toe down and leaving a mark from it. Because in all the tracks where people are finding these tracks, there's no sign of a fifth toe. There's 4 toes. They're pretty much equidistant across the front of the foot. And the front of the foot tends to not curve very much like human feet do. You got a right and a left foot, and the toes are like curving outside. And these things are just kind of lined across the top. All 4 toes pretty much the same size, both feet. Very strange looking. So I did some more research into this and found out that there are actually reports of the same thing in Scandinavia, of all weird places. So I got a hold of Crypto Sweden over there, and she's not doing anything on her channel right now, but you can still find it on YouTube. And she can actually read the Old Norse and Swedish languages. So she did a lot of digging in their books and old reports and legends and myths and stuff like that to try and figure out what was going on with this whole thing. And according to their legendary over there, we actually are dealing with 3 different things, because they have the Jotnar, which are the giants, and we think of, the same as the giants in Norse mythology, or the Nephilim, or any of those big, nasty, human-eating giants that are just obnoxious. Same thing. Then they've got especially the Sami people in the far north, which are like the indigenous natives that live up in Lapland, Finland, reindeer herder people. We think of kind of like with Eskimos over here. They've all got legends about the forest people, and the descriptions of their legends of the forest people are obviously talking about Bigfoot.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. But then there's this other third thing called trolls. Well, now trolls, what a troll is varies a lot in Scandinavia. It depends on where you're at exactly. If you're in Sweden, everything's a troll, including a ghost. They're all trolls. If you're in Norway, it's a little bit different. There's this third thing that isn't a Bigfoot and isn't a giant. That's a troll. And this would be probably what they were describing in the saga of Beowulf, 550 AD. By the way, the oldest thing written in the English language includes Grendel attacking the mead hall that Hrothgar had and beating the living snot out of all the humans there and ripping them limb from limb because they were being noisy and bothering him in his cave nearby. Quit your loud ass noise. Well, we've sure heard that in enough Bigfoot stories where somebody's out in the woods making a racket and Bigfoot shows up and, now you're leaving or I'm going to rip you to pieces, sort of thing.
Yep.
Well, in this case, he just ripped him to pieces, which also leans more heavily toward this encounter being maybe something other than a Bigfoot, because generally they don't get that damn violent, and especially with a whole bunch of trained warriors, a lot of weapons lying around. So, of course, you can always say there's been things added on to the account to make it, Hollywood the account, make it more interesting to listen to. That's probably true. But there's still a grain of truth there where something weird happened. And again, judging by the area, this could be a troll. So what we think now that we've done the research in it, when you see one of those weird looking 4-toed ginormous tracks, really what you're looking at is a troll track.
Oh,
and
wow.
There's several kinds of trolls, apparently 5 or 6 different kinds. There's very few of them. According to what I've heard from insider source, there's only 6,000-7,000 worldwide. So there isn't very many of them. The little ones are forest trolls, and they look barely any bigger than a Bigfoot. They're about the same size. And Leo Frank got a picture of one that's leading a group of Bigfoot over there where he lives in Nova Scotia that he calls Carl. And if you want to see Carl's picture, just pay attention to the the outro part on my show where his picture's on there every episode. He's standing behind a big root ball from a fallen tree about 7 feet up. He's got his head sticking in between looking.
Mm-hmm.
Nice picture of him. He is one ugly dude. But if you look at his face, and then you look at old drawings of trolls from like 200-300 years ago, it's an exact match. I mean, it's identical. Yeah. You can overlay one and fade right into the other one, and you're like, okay, well, somebody saw this thing, and then they made this drawing of it. No, they made this drawing 300 years ago, and we just got a picture of this thing.
Wow. Hey, before we go, I want to keep right on this point, but before I lose track of the questions, there's one question I'd like you just to answer briefly before I lose it. And it's from Steve Stockton. It says that Bigfoot Rob. What does Duke think of the reports of giants of Afghanistan encountered by the military?
Covered that earlier in the show, Steve. Giant of Kandahar. That was verified by more than one source that claims to have been involved in it. And one of them was there for the take them down, load them in the cargo net, and haul them out phase of things. And then there was a separate person that came forward that said he was at the airbase when they loaded it onto a cargo plane, and he was on the cargo plane flying back with it. So you got two different people that came forward that actually verify that report. And I have a third person I know that was in country during the Afghanistan thing, and they were in one of three helicopters that were flying over this valley. And while they were going over the valley, they kicked up something below them that apparently they scared it with the noise of the copter blades. And these other things took off away from them to their left, away from the flight path of the helicopters. But they could see them on the ground, and it was three giants. And they guesstimate they were running about 70 miles an hour away from the flight path of the helicopters.
Jeez Louise.
Wow.
You know, I wonder where they took that body.
Yep. And what'd they do with the DNA?
Yeah.
Yes, right.
And what are they doing with the DNA? That's,
you know, I don't get off topic here, but that just reminds me of, again, just, activity that we don't know what's going on. They might be saving that. Who knows, Duke? Maybe they're using that and they've got that in some laboratory underground, right? I mean, who the hell knows? How come we can't find any of these gigantic supposed, which I know aren't supposed, found relics or bones that supposedly was turned over to the Smithsonian that are vanished and gone? Can't find any of it.
Yeah, well, let's ask the Smithsonian that question. Where are they?
Yeah.
You took them away for further study and safekeeping. Where are they? We've got 150 at least newspaper reports, some including pictures of the bones from between the late 1800s and shortly after the turn of the century, of people digging up giant skeletons. It was in local newspapers. Takes a while for the information to travel to Washington so they can send out a Smithsonian team to run off with them. And in the meantime, the locals have a heyday with it and do all kinds of coverage on it, and it becomes a big story. And then the friendly people from the Smithsonian showed up and took the bones away for further study. They put it in that big warehouse where the Ark of the Covenant went at the end of Indiana Jones, and it was never seen again. Or they threw it into a furnace, or they dropped it in the Atlantic Ocean, whatever. So, yeah, their feet need to be held to the fire. Where are all these giant bones? And when they say that never happened, well, there's a book called Ancient Giants Who Ruled America, and it's got 150 pages of reprints of original newspaper articles where these things were dug up, and every single one ends with, and then the friendly little guys from the Smithsonian showed up and hauled away the bones, never to be seen again.
There had to be somebody that went, no, I'm taking one of these with me.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's actually been some interesting maneuvering. A couple of the native tribes were involved in it because they had gotten giant bones dug up and they were going to haul them away for further study. And nowadays, if the giants claim that it's one of their ancestors, you ain't hauling it away for further study, buddy. So they had to give it back again. And then there was also a couple of them that were dug up. One of them was in Minnesota, where they didn't even remove anything. They just reburied it. So there's still places that, people know of almost guaranteed where there's still giant remains in the ground. But how long they're going to stay there, bones rot away too. So.
I don't know if we're ever going to be able to see this stuff, like disclosure type thing. What do you think, dude? You think it'll ever happen?
Oh, I think there's the chance of disclosure is equivalent to that of a snowflake in gasoline plate armor traversing the layers of hell from one side to the other.
Now, do you think it's just going to be disclosure of giants that are kept under, or do you think it's going to be?
Oh, they definitely don't want to disclose that because that proves the biblical narrative. That's the last thing they'll disclose. That's why they're talking about the aliens and stuff, because that's not biblical. You can get away with talking about aliens, but if it's giants, you can't talk about that. I had Robert Kreider on my show, and he talked about the remains of the Denisovans that they had found. And what's this Denisovan? Well, they're a relic kind of human. Okay, and they were really tall, like 8-9 feet tall. Yeah, so they were giants. No. There's no such thing as giants. We just said those are giant humans. Well, yeah, they're like humans, and they're like about 9 feet tall, but those weren't the biblical giants or anything. So forget. Don't look at the Bible. Don't look at that.
Right.
So, do you think we're in the same boat with Bigfoot?
Yeah, absolutely. And Bigfoot isn't the biblical giant either. It's something a little bit different. So, the problem with Bigfoot is it's not a big dumb ape running around the woods, and that's a narrative they want to keep presenting, especially on mainstream TV, which is complete and utter bullshit. Right. They're never going to tell you the truth on there. You're never going to hear it because it does not fit their narrative. And their narrative is, make fun of Bigfoot. In case anybody thinks that it's real and actually goes out looking and finds anything, second lie, make sure they think it's a big dumb ape.
Right.
Because they sure as hell don't want to admit there's some other form of life, relic hominids, that are living right alongside us on the continent that are so damn sneaky they can out-sneak the government on a regular basis and get pretty much any damn place they want to be and get away with it. So, and they have zero control over them. Well, that's a security problem. And then, of course, anybody that disappears in the woods or gets hurt or anything, you can blame the government for it because there's these other things out there that you have no control over, and they're hurting people,
Well, and I read a deal just here recently about they're very concerned about the uptick in bear attacks. And I'm thinking, what if it's not bear attacks? Because we've seen that before,
Well, if there's areas where there's hunting going on and bear hunting's allowed, there's not going to be any uptake in bear attacks because it only takes them about 2 years to figure out human with gun equals me getting my ass shot. And then they stay away from humans.
So do you think, and I know now this, depending on who we're talking to, this is like kicking a hornet's nest, but Bigfoot attacking humans. I know it happens. Because, you're going to have one, I think you have some out there that the troops are brought up or the clans are brought up to just not like us because they've had a negative run-in with us or whatever in the past. I also think that there's these young males that are out there that somebody mistakes the bear and shoots him in the ass and pisses him off.
Yep.
But I have to wonder how many of these attacks are done. And I know Dogman is responsible for a portion of it, but I have to wonder how much of it are these giants that we're talking about.
There is some, I got a report leaked to me earlier this year that there was an incident going on in Colorado and that at least one park ranger had been killed. And I wasn't able to get exact numbers on how many people had been killed, but apparently they closed the whole park and they brought in military kill team to dispose of the problem. Right. And then after they dispose of it, they open up the park again. Well, I got this report. Well, this was still going on. So I went and took a look at Colorado and said, which parks are closed right now? One of them had been closed for a while. One of them had been closed 2 days earlier for no real reason. Whole park cleared out, park closed. So I kept an eye on that one. And sure enough, a day and a half later, that park's opened up again, mysteriously.
Yeah, I was going to ask too, with the mountain giants and all this. And
anyway, here's the part that's pertinent. Okay, the guy that told me what was going on, one of his relatives was actually there dealing with the situation. And all that he would tell him is that it's another Kandahar giant incident.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like Christy Sci-Fi. It's not Bigfoot, only a small percentage. And I agree, Christy. I really do, because I don't think for the most part that, and I don't believe that Bigfoot is something evil waiting around a tree to snatch you up and eat you. I just don't. But
no, they're not.
But I do think that they're just like you know, some tribes of humans, they you know, they're aggressive. They were brought up that way. That's how you know, their culture is. And you have these young males, these rogues, if you want to call them that. I don't really. I know there's rogues out there, but I don't think they're all rogues. I think they're just moving on, trying to start their own clan that have a negative run-in with them, with humans. And like I said, you know, somebody mistakes it or whatever, or gets scared when they see it and shoots it in the ass, and or just harasses it, and things go south. But I do agree with you. It's a very small percentage of I think Bigfoot attacks, because if it was a bigger percentage, well, I don't think me and Duke would be sitting here talking to you.
No. Nope, I've been lots of areas with Sasquatch in them, and they haven't squished me yet. The first thing that I saw when I was a kid, I don't even know what that was. Does not conform to known standards of Bigfoot. So again, still wild card there. Some other horror, some other cryptid horror of the north. Perhaps
Well,
some of the tribes label as Wendigo. I don't know.
Well, you know, and that brings up another question that I want your opinion on. I don't think I've ever asked you this since we found, because you know, I've got that picture that we measured at 14 foot tall.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then we found those damn bipedal hoof prints that were 12 to 14 inches around. And what the hell do you think we're dealing with?
Well, with my knowledge of cryptids and Lord of the Rings, I'd say you got a Balrog problem.
That's what it sounds like, don't it?
Yeah, I don't know. There's weird cryptids, man. I'll tell you that. One of the things, getting back to the mountain giants now, so everybody is understanding this. We have now explained why I'm calling something mountain giants that is not actually a regular giant. Regular giants can live anywhere. They can be in the mountains, plains, whatever. They all look the same. They look like giant humans. These things don't actually look like giants either, which is interesting. They kind of look more like a Sasquatch, except they've got a more narrow frame to them, apparently. Although, you know, it's possible that there could be some massive, bulky ones. What few reports we have of these things seem to indicate they can be mistaken for a Bigfoot, because they look a lot like one, except for they're a lot taller. They're not as broad through the shoulders. They don't have the massive frame. They're built more like a Shaquille O'Neal and less like an Arnold Schwarzenegger.
That's what I was thinking about a basketball.
The other two things, of course, is the tracks, which again are going to be four-toed. And then the other thing that keeps popping up over and over again that led us to start thinking this was trolls is when people have actually seen these things, they have tusks. And you ask them, what do you mean tusks? Well, they got these big like fangs coming up out of their lower jaw. There isn't anything coming down from the top. Just
almost like an orc.
Well, like an orc or an ogre or something, the way they draw them nowadays. And maybe that's where they got the idea from originally. But that pops up in all the old, you know, drawings of mountain trolls and stuff like that, that they all had these tusks. And this comes up in the report too. And interestingly, some of the Bigfoot over on the Omaha reservation that have been spotted have this anomaly where they've got tusks. It's the only Bigfoot population in North America I've heard of this. So I had Robin take a look into it, and she said, yeah, there's like a bunch of them are just regular Sasquatch, and there seems to be some of them that have hybridized with something else. They're not regular Sasquatch, or mixed with something else. Well, you know, in my opinion, the something else is a troll. They probably hybridized with a local forest troll, and that's why they all got the tusk thing coming up. Right. But again, the picture of the forest troll, if that's what it is that Leo Frank got, doesn't show any tusks. So again, it could be they hybridized with something bigger. But you know, hard to know there. So anyway, other stuff about trolls is they, you know, if they do reproduce, they sure don't need to very often, because all the legends say these things live ridiculous long time, hundreds of years.
Right.
And during the winter, you might not see them moving around at all, because unlike Sasquatch, apparently they can hibernate. And they can hibernate for as long as they want to hibernate, which means they could go take a nap in a cave for 4 or 5 years before they wake up and come out for a snack and eat a couple cows and then go take a nap again. So just because you've been living in an area for a while and you haven't seen anything, that doesn't necessarily mean there ain't one around there. Could be taking a nap in a cave for 3-4 years nearby. And the other thing that we've noticed is that what very few reports you get of these things, they really tend to be in mountain ranges, which is again why we're sticking with the name mountain giants for them. You could make that interchangeable for mountain trolls. But with the size of the creature like that, it being solitary and whatnot, if there is like a mountain range where there's one living, there's probably only one in the entire mountain range. It's unlikely that they live in big groups. It might be small units, 2-3 of them or something like that. But in order to feed themselves, they're going to have a huge area of food. And it could be that in areas where they're around, they're basically like running the show for the Sasquatch too. When they wake up, that's the boss. Get out of his way.
Gotcha.
So overall then, Duke, what you've been talking about today, so you do think today in 2022 going on 2023 that there are mountain giants still today, just in very desolate locations, maybe the mountains of Montana
again
or Alaska.
you're gonna have to have an area where there's a whole lot of woods to feed critters this big.
Right.
And I got a report from Alaska where there was an area around this one mountain where people kept disappearing. And the locals knew it wasn't a good idea to go in there. And they got the local government to basically put a fence around it. Put a 7-foot tall fence all the way around this damn mountain. It went for like miles and miles and miles. And all the locals knew to stay out of there. But like tourists that would come up there and go hunting would still go in there and disappear. And according to my source, within two years, there was over 20 people that went into this area and never came out again. And finally, apparently, military responded to this issue and went in and killed what it was. And it was a man-eating giant, 19 feet tall. The local tribes knew he was there because they knew when he had moved into the area 170 years ago, they quit going there. Mm-hmm. So that tells you how long this thing was living. So, it could have been an actual mountain troll too. We don't have a really good description of it, other than it was about 19 feet tall and ate about 20 people apparently within a couple of years. So getting back to the track thing, here's some examples of where mountain giant tracks have actually been found. In Hallsville, Texas, 1976, Zoli Owens sighted a silver-haired creature 12 feet tall. Next to it was a smaller creature with red-tinged hair, which may have been a female. Tracks were found. Corinth, Mississippi, 1976. Tracks which were 6 inches wide and 15 inches long were found at 2 sites, some 4 to 5 miles apart. Photographs showed 4 toes clearly. Some of the prints, however, failed to register a 4th toe even. 11 months later, 15-inch long tracks turned up in the south in Lincoln County, Mississippi. Footprint found in Acorn County, Mississippi on March 14th, 1976. Along Smith Bridge Road north of US 72. They show a picture of that with a guy's foot next to it. And the track is about 75% longer than his foot and twice as wide. And it's got 4 big, obvious toes in it. Fort Gordon, Georgia, 1979. Late in the year, reported encounter with a hairy creature 10 to 10.5 feet tall took place in the area where tracks were later found 22 inches long, 9 inches wide. Poplar River, Manitoba, 1988. John Larson was out fishing when he found footprints measuring 7 by 14 inches. They had only 4 toes. A 14-foot stride was noted. California, Pennsylvania, 1994. Tracks were found in snow in Washington County, measuring 31 inches long by 17 inches wide. Only 4 toes were showing. From the heel of the left foot to the heel of the right foot, the distance was 6 feet. And I should also add to that, Papa Craig found what he estimated to be a 2.5-foot long track. He found more than one of them. He found a whole trackway of them in the Wallowa Mountains in Washington State back in the 1970s. And his son was up there hunting about 20 years later and found a line of the same gigantic tracks.
Geez, you're talking about something like 30 inches long.
Yeah. Well, he said closer to 3 feet than 2 feet.
Jeez Louise.
So yeah, 30 plus inches long. Well, and then the Indian Army, while they were climbing Makalu a couple of years ago, just happened to cross a track line of tracks that were, if I remember right, 32 by 17 inches. And that was a whole track line in the snow. They stopped, measured them, took pictures, posted it on Twitter, made everybody's heads explode. You could still find tons of reports of that on YouTube. All the local little TV stations and stuff are clustered around the Himalayas, all did shows on it. India and stuff, a bunch of them came out. And there was even a few in the West here. And they were all complaining that they shouldn't have posted anything like that to Twitter and made people's heads explode. And they're like, hey, we don't care. We found weird tracks. We got pictures. You figure out what made them.
Right. Hey, you know what I find about this whole conversation, Duke, which is fascinating, and thank you so much, World Bigfoot Radio. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe on YouTube. Duke just went over 20,000 subscribers. Congratulations to Duke on that. You know how we talk about Bigfoot and cryptids in general. You know how we always talk about there's orbs, there's UFOs. A lot of times they appear, disappear in portals. I guess I'm convinced that of all the things we talk about, the mountain giant probably holds his own, right? You don't hear anything regarding UFOs, orbs, or anything because they just hold their own and they are their own separate entity, are they not?
Well, I mean, let's face it, we get very few reports of these guys,
Right.
you know, and I should add in on all the track finds there that, yeah, Michael Matt from my team found a 22-inch mountain giant track about 2-3 miles from the ghost town of Coloma over in the Gemstone Range here in 2019. So, but you know, so somebody finds 1 or 2 tracks every 2 or 3 years. That's how much evidence we're getting. We're getting just enough evidence to know that they're out there in certain places and they exist. And, you know, every 4 or 5 years, you'll get a witness that'll have the balls to come forward and talk about what they actually saw. And that doesn't happen very often. And trying to get them to actually go on air and talk about it, virtually impossible.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You know, it's bad enough when, you know, people, you know, have just a regular Bigfoot. It's I've said this before. When a Bigfoot sighting or encounter is normal, you know, and you experience something that's, you know, worse than that, you damn sure don't want to come forward because hell, most of the Bigfooters will call you crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Even the people that think Bigfoot's real think anything that size is crazy. Papa Craig's in chat right now backing me up. Look at the comment he just posted. Is like I referenced, he's one of the people that actually found one. And the Walla Mountains are not near Walla Walla, for whoever's in the chat room thinking that's the same place. They're up in the northeast corner of the state.
Is this Papa Craig? I asked my son, is this the one?
Papa C, yep. He said,
I asked my son if he ever saw anything resembling those kinds of tracks. He said, "Oh, I see them in the swamps up there. They get bigger as they dry." Wrong.
Yeah. Papa C found several of them. He found one. He thought it was a mud puddle that had elk tracks at the front of it that just made it look like a footprint. And then he looked back behind it and found another one. And he looked back and then he looked in front of it and found a couple, 2, 3 more where it went into a swamp. And then there was just huge potholes where it had stepped beyond that.
Yeah. Hey, we've got, I was going to ask you too. It was, what was it? It was about, okay, you know how we had the Vikings, they conquered whatever when they were out going in battle, and they talking about big beasts or huge men that they were fighting. And I think a lot of people attribute that to maybe like Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or something. Do you think maybe it was giant mountain giants, or are we talking about a totally different time period, or is that even possible?
Well, if you're talking about the Vikings over in Scandinavia, yeah, it could easily be mountain giants because that's where most all the original legends about the quote-unquote trolls come from.
Okay.
And there's supposed to be more than one kind of troll, according to their legend, too. The really ginormous ones are the mountain trolls that live up in the mountains. And they've got little-known part of the story of Ragnarok, the end of the ages, according to Viking mythology, is that when the end of the ages come, the mountains start splitting open and the mountain giants come out and start chowing down on everybody.
it's interesting because the ones that the Vikings that landed over here and were supposedly ran off, which they, from the account, it sounds like something they had never seen before. So I'm wondering if those were Bigfoot, or maybe the red-haired giants. I don't know. I mean, didn't they describe them as just wild men covered in hair that attacked them?
Which ones? I'm sorry, I missed a little bit at the beginning of
The
that.
ones that, when the Vikings landed over here and they ran them off.
Oh yeah, they didn't give a color description. They just said they were giant, swarthy savages. And swarthy does not describe Native Americans. They don't even have facial hair. So what the hell were they talking about? And the problem with one of the reasons why they could have had a bad time with them, whether they got along with the natives here in North America or not, they could have had a bad time with the Sasquatch because the Vikings are so superstitious. Whenever they landed some new place, they automatically assumed that anything they saw they couldn't instantly recognize might be a ghost, some kind of supernatural being. So their protocol to check and see if it was live flesh and blood or a ghost was to shoot an arrow at it. So if it went ouch and the arrow stuck in it, it was live flesh and blood. But if the arrow just went completely through it and nothing happened to it, then it's a ghost. Stay away. Well, this is not the best way to say hello to a new culture or people that you meet by shooting an arrow into one of them to see if they're a ghost or not. And this could have been how the Vikings got off on the wrong foot with Sasquatch.
Yeah, very, very well could. That goes right back to what we were talking about earlier. Somebody shoots it in the ass and pisses it off. It amazes me that we have all this, and I know we beat this dead horse all the time. We've got all this freaking evidence. We could convict Bigfoot and even these mountain giants in court, but folks just refuse to see it. I don't understand it.
Well, their mental framework is more comfortable. They've got their little, glass box that they're living inside of, and they don't want anybody throwing a rock at it and breaking it. Because then the outside world will come pouring in and does not comport with what they think it looks like.
I tell you, we're going to sit here. We're going to take a little 5-minute break, Duke. We'll finish up with some mountain giants. So when we get back, though, Duke, I know that I mentioned we're going to talk a little Genoskwa. I view it. I've seen it. Maybe I've never seen it, but there's talks about this being something else, something different. Yep. Not a lot of people talk about it. Some killing machine. I don't know what it is, but we'll come back with that. We'll finish up the mountain giants. We'll take a 5-minute break because I see the text made a new break thing. So I just really want to play this and see how it looks. We'll take 5 minutes. No, don't anybody go anywhere. We'll be back with Duke Sullivan, World Bigfoot Radio, on the flip side of this 5-minute creation by text.
Well, folks, I'm going to save you from watching the same thing that I have. We've been playing for a long time. So that was not the new break video. I am uploading it as we speak. So we're going to take a later 5-minute break, and I just took over Rob's channel. I'm going to talk to y'all. Just give me a chance to go tell y'all what I'm going to do later tonight. And I'm going to do a Dogman show tonight. So I'm thinking about doing it about, because I don't want to step on anybody's toes out there and everything. And we all try to work together, Unfortunately, this time of the evening, there's a lot of shows going on that y'all know, of course y'all know about it. And we really, really appreciate y'all choosing this one to come over and listen to us. But it's going to be about 2:30 in the morning, folks, that I'm going to do a very, very late night show. And I'm going to do it over Dogman history, and more so the bloody history of Dogman, and the attacks that we've seen and that we know about. We're going to talk about those and the suspected Dogman attacks. And why did not get attacked? Because he had every opportunity, a lot of opportunities. And why haven't I been attacked walking around Brown Springs? So y'all watch for that. Turn the alert bell on. 2:30 in the morning, Texas Front Porch. Now, if somebody's going to be up and wants to come on and talk, that's going to be awesome. If you have any questions about my encounters, or we can just, talk about, your ideas and everything else. Because I like to open that show up, because a lot of y'all talk to. I actually have a shirt, Emma, that says I'm actually a dog man. A lot of y'all get to talk in chat about it, and a lot of the questions, skip by us, we don't notice or whatever. But if you really want to jump on and talk, there. Now we can't hear Rob and Duke moving furniture. This will give y'all the prime opportunity to come on, and you ain't got to get on camera. But to ask questions, put your ideas out there. I don't care if you agree with me or not. That's how we're going to learn, folks, is talking, having conversations. So y'all be prepared for that, because I'd really like to have y'all's input on this. Let's see. Channel Warehouse. It's not like the pressure of being on camera is some trade-off text. It's cool. But I know some, some folks have a problem being on camera. I get that. I used to. When I started out, I didn't want to be on camera. I'm nothing to look at, folks. I got a face for radio. But if you want to come on and tell us your encounter, tell us your story, tell us your opinions, all I ask is you be as respectful to me and everybody else as I am to you. That's all I ask. Now you can ask me anything you want. Doesn't have to be about Dogman. You can ask me anything you want. I will not guarantee I will answer you though, but I will politely deny not to answer, because if it's something personal or something like that, it's going to stay that way. So I shanghaied your channel there, Rob.
Yeah, I know you did. I saw that. That's
well,
okay. I understand you're doing your little a Bigfoot special tonight at 2:30 in the morning. That should be cool. Everyone go check that
Actually,
out.
it's a Dogman special.
What did I say? Bigfoot?
Yes, you did.
Well, I'm sorry, Tex. We're talking about Dogman. Yeah, it sounded good. It sounds like it's very fascinating, Tex. Everyone knows Tex has got weird hours. And so, yeah, he tries to get on when he can. And I appreciate him coming on here tonight.
The break that you
Yeah.
for some reason I had downloaded the wrong break.
Yeah,
it was the old one. I'll let y'all have a glimpse. We'll just take a glimpse of the new one.
Yeah, let's take a quick. I gotta see this. I put that and I say, what the hell's going on here? Did I press the wrong button? I'm like,
well, no, I uploaded the wrong video for you.
Yeah, gosh damn, Tex.
You know what Nelson Muntz would say?
So here's a little glimpse of the new one.
All right, yeah,
nothing special, guys. It's just a few little changes. That's all it is. It's just updated version.
Yeah, it's the same.
What the hell? Oh, here we go. Here we go. That's pretty much it. I mean, I just updated.
Yeah, well, you had to put it out. Yeah, for everybody, we have another show on Friday night. We're not replacing Jessica. She's doing her thing. She's still part of the family, but she's moving on to other things. She's by the way, Jessica Jones. Be found on Space Out Radio Saturday and Sunday at 10 in the evening. Go check her out. Subscribe to Jessica the Cryptid Huntress and Dave Scott's World Space Out Radio. Duke is World Bigfoot Radio. Yeah, so they're on Fridays, 9 in the East, the Blondes, the Booze, and the Woo. Not booze like drinking, but booze like BOOS, like, ghosts, stuff like that.
And you know what? And I didn't realize it. I don't know who brought it up. That the acronym for that show was BBW.
BBW. Blondes, Blonde. Well, that's probably Jason Blonde Boo Woo. BB Woo. Yeah, BB Woo, Baby Woo.
Well, BBW. Well, some people in chat. Well, it's an acronym for what everybody uses now for big, beautiful women.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. Well, they're not. They're nice looking women. I tell you that.
Oh, hey, they are in the eyes, and you know what? They are so fun to talk to. They have such great energy. And you were talking about Jessica still being a part of the team, and she is part of the team, folks. She's going to be co-hosting. She's going to be our research eyes and ears out there in Georgia, in that area.
Yep.
In fact, she's still going to be on the business cards. So
absolutely, Tex. Good shout out to Jessica. And again, everybody, I noticed a lot of new people showed up. Please subscribe to Texas Front Porch, Bigfoot, Michigan Rob, and World of Bigfoot Radio. So we ended that with Mountain Giants, and I had made mention in the promo that we were doing a little Genoskwa talk. And Duke says, well, let's do the Mountain Giants because he's well versed at that. Now, Duke is well versed in everything. And Duke, the Genoskwa, it is something different. I know not much about it. What I've read is, it's a killing machine, some sort of cryptid. In fact, it has like battle armor on his fur from mud and things. I don't know. I was reading through that. Why don't you give us a little taste of this creature called the Genoskwa?
Okay. Well, for this, we have to mostly go to legend, mythology, and occasional psychics researching it.
Okay.
Genoskwa, if you go back to the legend, it's the Iroquois Stonecoats, Iroquois Confederation, being a bunch of different tribes that all work together, shared different stories and whatnot. And that's also where you'll find stories of the Gugwe coming from. And since they're using two different names and descriptions, they ain't the same thing. Genoskwa, the Stonecoats, they actually have a rendering of a they used to do pictures of these things on their teepees. Oh, buffalo, wolves, whatever. They would do pictures on them. And they had pictures on some of the really old teepees that had drawings of these things. And back in the early days, when the settlers were showing up and hanging around with them, they saw those, and they actually made copies of a couple of them because they thought they were interesting. And what they appear to show is giant human-looking things, about 15 feet tall, covered with rocks, chasing Indians. And the Indians are busily showering arrows at them while they're running away. So that's not encouraging. Indians losing, running away, showering arrows at them. Stone-covered giant following with, what a huge club or ripped-out tree that it's trying to squish them with. Legends are equally as alarming that these things would just come right into camp, grab people, and start eating them. Because they were just impervious to all the weaponry the natives had. They had this stone armor that they had on them. And when all you've got is stone arrowheads and stone spearheads, and they hit stone, they just break. They don't go through it. So they were completely impervious. Now, the methodology of their application of this armor gives you an indication of who it is that you're dealing with, because unless you're talking about like the biblical tribe of Nephilim that were the Horium that supposedly were really hairy, it doesn't sound like what they're talking about is a giant. And some of this legendary gets kind of intermeshed with the local Sasquatch legendary too, which is even more peculiar. But how these things were putting the armor on wasn't that they were making a coat out of them. It's they had just as much hair on their bodies as a Sasquatch does, and they would go rub up against a pine tree or something, get all the sap and the pitch all over their hair, and then they'd go roll around in gravel, essentially, rocks and whatnot, and it would stick to the gummy substances now impregnating their hair, and then they would go back and do it again. And after 2 or 3 applications like that, they just were covered with rock. They were stone giants, so none of the weaponry that the natives had would do anything to them. So they could just get away with it, attacking with impunity. Now, it's interesting that you don't hear any reports in the modern day of them doing this, although it's possible some of them still do. And that the just any sightings of them, because they're so gigantic, would if somebody bothered to report it, would stand out like a sore thumb. So the thing that seems to be what's going on there is that probably about the same time that firearm technology permeated the native tribes in the East, where they could actually get access to boomsticks, they started using them on the Genoskwa. And yeah, a 70 caliber round ball will go through a little bit of rock plating on the outside and blow a nice big giant hole in whatever it's hitting. So at that point, they decided, well, stone armor now ineffective, and these guys have weapons that can do serious damage to us. Maybe we should quit raiding them, because at that point in the history, that's kind of where all of those stories come to an end. Okay. So did they disappear? Okay, well, Jessica Jones did a reading on the Judaculla Rock. And one thing that she got correct in her remote viewing on it is that apparently Judaculla was a Genoskwa. He was one of the Iroquois stone giants. And for whatever reason, he moved down to that area in the south and took over the local Sasquatch down there, which are called the Sukalu, and kind of lorded it over them for a while. Apparently what happened to the rest of the Genoskwa is after they realized that they were kind of outmatched weaponry-wise, they moved up north. So according to what I'm hearing at present, they're way up north where there aren't any humans, basically. And you occasionally get one that'll wander down into the lower 48 for some reason. And that's pretty much it. I know somebody in Louisiana recorded seeing one that was, somewhere between 15 and 20 feet tall just this year. And they're a person that has interaction with the Sasquatch, the Bigfoot down there. And they said when the thing was in their area, they were paranoid. And then I had somebody else tell me that they had, again, a researcher that had Bigfoot right on their property. They were hanging around there for years. And at some point, he saw this gigantic thing that, again, was like 15, 20 feet tall, but otherwise looked kind of like a Bigfoot. And one of the regular 8 or 9 foot tall Bigfoot in his area was like running and hiding from this thing, trying to get away from it. And it would actually chasing him through his property.
Wow.
So
Gene,
what do you think the culprit was to? Well, I know Jessica remote viewed this, and she came up with Bigfoot. But do What about Alaska? That Portlock incident.
Portlock, they're just straight up Sasquatch tribe that are really crabby. Knack, they rule the Kenai Peninsula. That's a tribe in that area, and they don't like humans, and they don't like humans living there. And it's a good idea not to live there. But that's the case with quite a few areas in Alaska. There's a ton of Sasquatch, or what they call hairy men, up there. But most of those tribes are fairly hostile, don't like humans around, and have very short temper. So there could be a reason that quite a few people go missing in Alaska, other than the hostile conditions, other dangerous giant predators, accidents, and things like that. But to get back to the Genoskwa thing, where she got it right is it is part Bigfoot, but that's not all it is. Apparently, the Genoskwa are hybrids. Juticula had 6 fingers. Juticula rock imprint, 6 fingers. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you get one of these classic 15, 20-foot tall giants somehow ends up mating with a large female Sasquatch, and the hybrids you get from it are Genoskwa. They look a lot like Bigfoot. They're 15 to 20 feet tall. They have 6 digits, double rows of teeth, and they have the same bad habits as their fathers. They eat humans.
So, yeah. So they eat humans. They kind of look like a hybrid Bigfoot, and
again, this is part of the problem with trying to ID any of these things, because the description of a Genoskwa, if it's got its stone coat on, you know what it is.
Yes.
But if it doesn't have its stone coat on, the description of these things is almost the same as a mountain giant.
Jeez, oh Pete's, man.
Now, a mountain giant, you can tell it's got, first of all, tusks. And secondly, a mountain giant is a troll. And all the trolls, they always draw with this big banana nose. It's got a big, huge, long nose on it. So that's one way that you could tell if you're seeing something. It's like 15 to 20 feet tall. And, you can't otherwise tell that if it's got big tusks coming up out of its lower jaw and it's got that big, long banana nose, probably a troll. Otherwise, could just be, giant Sasquatch.
And you throw another thing in the mix, they say these things eat people, where there's Genoskwa. So, and this is nothing to do with, of course, the face eater, right? That's a totally, again.
Yeah, that's a Gugwe, which is not related to any of them, apparently.
Yeah, apparently, right.
Yeah, I'm doing a show on that very soon. And Christy Sci-Fi in chat is one of the few people that's gotten a picture of a Gugwe and not got eaten by it. And she was lucky enough to get a shot of one face on, looking right at it. So that was really handy, because the other previous shots that we got, Beast of 7 Shoots and stuff like that, they're looking at it from an angle. William Lunsford got a shot of one, but it's not really clear enough to get a good definition on what the face looks like. He wasn't close enough to it. And a few other people have gotten accidental shots of them too. But again, none of them, they're only good enough to tell that it's not a Dogman or a Bigfoot. It's probably a Gugwe, but beyond that, you don't really know anything. Now, the interesting thing about Christie's shot, this thing's blending into the bushes. And when you crop it enough and bring it up so that you can actually see the image, there is a relic primate whose skull we have that matches the characteristics of the face on this thing 100%. So I'm going to be doing a show here shortly presenting my theory on what I think these things are. And if it isn't one of them, it's something very closely related. So you guys can, stay tuned for that. That's coming up on my channel at some point in the near future here.
Yeah, I'm not going to miss that.
No, I mean, that's fascinating, Duke. And if anybody can find us, it's you, because you've been doing this for so long, and one of the most knowledgeable guys I believe out there in this subject matter. And we come up with all these different, I guess, well, I'll just say the word cryptid, and some probably are not. What do you think? So we have talked Genoskwa, talk mountain giants, you got Bigfoot, you got Dogman, Mothman. I would imagine, Duke, there's something else out there, right, that we haven't even seen or come across, right? I mean, would I be foolish to think otherwise?
Oh, no doubt there is, and that's part of the thing that gets into the woo aspect right now. But scientists can tell you that the Earth's vibrational frequency is actually changing. The whole planet's vibrational frequency is changing. It's the Schumann resonance frequency. And as it changes and goes upward, it's entirely possible that this is going to activate access through portals that were formerly closed or really difficult to access, are now going to become not closed or really easy to access. And we could be seeing visitors from other places beyond the veil that either haven't been able to visit the earth in thousands of years or maybe have never been here. So it's possible we could be, and this is starting to happen where people are getting pictures of cryptids. It's like, we don't know what the hell they are. The natives in the area don't know what the hell they are. Nobody's ever seen one. We don't know what the hell they are. And are they aliens? Are they like aliens pets that got loose out of the saucer and they couldn't capture it before they had to take off again? Are these GMO military things that they're making in field testing? We just don't know. I found an interesting story recently that actually ran into two different versions of it from two different people that were very similar, that what everybody's calling a rake now was actually a program that escaped, ate a couple scientists, got loose in the wild, and they're now breeding. And this actually makes sense to me because just about any kind of cryptid that you could possibly run into, all you have to do is go ask the local tribe in that area, hey, what kind of weird paranormal things are around here? And it'll be on the list. If it was ever around there in the past, they saw it and they got a name for it. And if they haven't seen it, don't have a name for it, nobody on the continent has a name for it. Well, either it's aliens or it's some GMO project that got loose. That's pretty much your two options.
You talk about the projects and everything. I heard a story that I believe was in South Africa. They had a facility there that they had several dogmen housed, and they got loose and just destroyed a whole village. And they either had to take them all down or they were able to capture them all again. I heard that story about 5 or 6 years ago. Have you ever heard that, Duke?
I'm not sure if I've come across that story.
I thought it was interesting because supposedly they've got these installations all over the world. And what, aside from Dogman, what if they militarized the Gugway and the Genoskwa? I mean, good grief.
Yeah, what if they found a really rare creature called a Gugway and they managed to get a sample of it and they started making more because they thought they'd make good weapons. And it turns out that they don't make such good weapons. But they got tons of them and a bunch more got loose. And so this old relic monster that was hardly seen at all for hundreds of years is starting to pop up all over the place. Because it sure seems like that's what's going on right now.
I know, right?
We're getting off subject. Not that I know. I mean, a subject that we're going to have to do another show on because I'm just thinking that, Tex kind of stole my thunder just a little bit because I was asked a question about what your thoughts were on these government-created creatures, weapons of war, but they're actual, quote unquote, let's just say monsters, right? Mm-hmm. And, and we talk about that maybe they're out of control and they're not doing what the government wants them to do, but we've all heard about the mind control experiments. And I just wondered, Duke, if there's something going on right now with all these things going on, all these military underground bases, we've all heard of them. I'm wondering if there's a process right now where they can actually mind control these beasts for hell, the missing 411, right? Anything to just take over a land and not have it be with no human factor involved. Mind control of creatures.
First of all, we have it on eyewitness reports of there being dogmen around certain military installations, especially ones run by the CIA.
Yeah.
And I had a guest on my show years ago that was fishing on this river. They had a fence across it, and you could just kind of go right under the fence if you didn't mind going underwater. And yet on the other side was a good fishing area. It was also inside of a CIA installation. So he liked the fishing there, but he was in there with a couple of his friends, and while they were there, they ran into a dog man that had just killed a deer, and that scared the hell out of him. And then he got his courage back. The other ones didn't. And he went in there heavily armed with night vision goggles on and decided he was going to sit with his back to this tree with his night vision goggles on and see if he could get any visuals while he was there. And during the course of the night, something came up near him, and he said the The infrared signature looked like a dog, man. And it threw a deer at him. I mean, like threw a deer at him.
Wow. Yeah.
So as soon as the sun came up, he got the hell out of there and never went back again. I did a show with Cat Hansen years ago, which the original title had to be changed. You can still find it. It's called Battle Wolves now. And it was about militarizing cryptids. And she actually tracked a dog man right back to a military base and saw it jump over the fucking fence into the base.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned a report that came out of Fort Gordon not long ago. And I did some time over in Fort Gordon. And I can totally... it would not surprise me in the least that stuff coming out of there.
Well, it just makes sense that they would try and, militarize and train something like that. And the problem with these things is if they're smart enough to actually be useful as soldiers, they got their own idea about things they want to be doing. And taking orders from stupid humans probably isn't high on the list.
No, I wouldn't think so.
I wouldn't think so either, dude. I gotta tell you, man, this has been a great show, Duke. I think we're gonna cut it there. We gotta have you back for some other things, and you're such a busy guy.
Dude, yeah, I gotta be on Spaced Out Radio again later on tonight.
Cryptid. Yeah, he does a Cryptid report.
Cryptid report on there.
Yeah, and when Duke's not sick, either me or Robin McCrae do a guest appearance, so that's always cool. But man, for me, man, it's 2:00 in the morning when
same thing with Robin. She's over in the Carolinas, so you guys are like 2:00 in the morning going, Is it time to be on the show yet?
Yeah, and then actually our buddy Tex, he did an appearance. I couldn't make it. You couldn't
thanks,
make
Tex.
It,
Appreciate that, buddy. I was really sick. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, hey, anytime, man.
Yeah,
if I'm available, I don't have a problem with it all. I mean, I'm working nights. I'm up, so
that's sweet.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me on your show. I know I've already been on everybody else's show. I've been on Texas Front Porch, and I've been on Beyond Brunch with Bigfoot.
Yeah,
twice, at least twice.
Yeah, at least twice, maybe 3 times. I don't know. I love having you on because you're just a wealth of knowledge, and like I told everybody, I talk to Duke quite frequently, and he fills me with knowledge that I don't think I could get anywhere else, frankly, Duke. So I do appreciate that, and I appreciate the friendship. And I do appreciate Texas Front Porch. You can find us on Monday through Friday. Mondays is Texas Front Porch, Tuesday at 7:30. We got so many shows. I got to get a list. Let's see. Mondays is Texas Front Porch. That's at 7:30. Tuesdays, Van Buren Variety at 8 in the East. BMR, Beyond BMR, 9 in the East. Jason McLean does this gig for some other guy. I don't even know why I'm bringing this up, but he does Mysteries, Libraries, and Untold Radio AM. 10 in the East. You got to look that one up. I don't have the link for that. Wednesdays is Jason McLean Questions Everything at 10 in the East. Thursdays, Brunch with Bigfoot, Michigan Rob. My new buddy, guy I work for, Steve Stockton. He'll be on Thursday. We're talking about the missing people. Then that night, Serial Papers with Jason. How many times do I have to say this Jason McLean guy, Tex? Seems like every other word. Blondes and Booze and the Woo, 9 in the East on Fridays. And, of course, lovely, the talented Jessica Jones. Spaced Out Radio Saturday and Sunday at 10 in the East. Also, I see a lot of new people out there. Thanks for coming on in. Subscribe to our channels. We got lots of great content outside of live shows. We got videos. I do encounter stories. Tex has been doing this late night gig. Go check him out. Check us all out. Subscribe to World Bigfoot Radio, Duke Sullivan, if you haven't. And I got to give a quick shout out to Pat and Susie for your super chats. Most appreciated. Now I'm looking for the new extra that Tex made. Let's see if this works. Duke Sullivan for Duke and Tex. And hurry up, Tex. Go ahead. Come on.
Hey, I got to say before you guys go.
Okay.
Really love hanging out with you guys. And of all the shows that I've ever been on, this is by far the most recent.
I thought you were going to say it sucked the least.
Yeah, sucked the least like Halloween.
No, go watch Texas Halloween special. That sucked the least out of every Halloween special.
Yeah, it was the sucked the least. I tell you what, there's like 50 going on that night.
I know.
Our ratings were pretty good, though, especially after your comment. Everyone seemed to miraculously, we boosted like 25 subscribers and 50 extra people in chat popped in. Hey, what the hell are these clowns doing over there? I don't know.
Well, I don't believe the propaganda. I went on a fact-finding mission and quickly checked all those other channels.
Okay,
nah, this sucks. This sucks.
Yeah,
God, this blows. Why the hell are they even wasting time on air on this one? I'm going back to Texas front porch.
Yeah, very good.
Hey, all roads lead to Texas front porch.
Yeah, I gotta tell you.
Real quick, 2:30 Central, 3:30 in the East this morning. Dogman and the Bloody History with me, so y'all don't miss it. Watch for it.
All right, sounds good. And now to the new extra. Love you all. Thanks for the super chats. See you next time. BMR, Duke, Tex. We're out.